everyone thinks they can just run ads and like make money, right? And the really like hot topic right now is like low ticket offers, right? So I'm going to drive people to this $37 offer. It's going to have like a little bump on it, an upsell, and then I'm just going to make tons of money. People like breaking the soap you see on TikTok, you know what I'm talking about? Where it's like, and then go into your message. It can be really just moving through the frame. If you do rely on video, it's really important that attention is currency, and email is still great for getting attention these days, even if people say it's dead or this doesn't work or that doesn't work. Having the name and email in your database, even if it's just to remarket to them, is totally worth the money to me.
Welcome to the Level Me podcast, where we rise to the level of those above us. And today we've got Zach Spuckler from Heart, Soul and Hustle, where they do Facebook and Instagram ads for online courses and businesses. Zach, welcome.
Hey, Jordan. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on, mate. I really appreciate it. I know you just kind of flew in from Bali and been hanging out a bit over there with our good friend Ange. How was that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It was amazing. We spent like 9 days in Bali. I just spent 9 days up in Brisbane. I'll spend about 4 days down on the Gold Coast and then back home.
Is Ange's event 4 days?
Her event is 3 days, 4 days in Bali, but we came down to the Gold Coast a day early and then we'll stay a day late.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And then you fly back home?
And then I fly back home, 13 hours. Well, the long flight is 13 hours.
Is it one leg or two?
It's here to Sydney, Sydney to Dallas, Dallas to home.
Oh gosh, 3 flights.
3 flights.
That's rough.
It's life could be worse, you know?
It's true. How often do you do it?
To Australia, maybe once every 1 or 2 years. Okay. So it's not terrible.
Yeah, that's not too bad. Anyway, tell us about the business, mate. What do you guys do?
Yeah, so we are a Facebook and Instagram ads consultancy and agency. So we work with people inside of a membership program. We have about 400 people in there where we kind of roll out strategies around and tied to Facebook and Instagram ads. So when you think of Facebook and Instagram ads, you conventionally think of like, oh, I want to run the ad, right? But there's other things that go into it, like what should the copy be? What should the landing page look like? Where should you be driving traffic? How do you leverage the tools? So we have a membership that kind of speaks to, we call it a Facebook ads centric membership, but we don't call it an ads membership. And the reason is, again, ads are only half the puzzle. Without the rest, you're just spending lots of money. And then we have a small agency. We work with about 8 to 10 clients at a time, very boutique, high touch. And that is really just to kind of keep our hands dirty. I like to know what's going on. I like to try new things. I have some really great clients who are like, yeah, let's try it. And that allows us to bring really great stuff into the membership. So yeah.
I love it. That's really important because a lot of people just think they're going to have some creative and they drop all this money on it and it's just going to blow up and work really well.
Yes.
What are some of the key learnings or things that you've seen with creatives that work really well or don't work really well? Or is there like a certain price point or audience target that you kind of set and look at?
Yeah. So it's a really good question. And it's, I always like to tell people, everyone thinks they can just run ads and like make money, right? And the really like hot topic right now is like low ticket offers, right? So I'm going to drive people to this $37 offer. It's going to have like a little bump on it, an upsell, and then I'm just going to make tons of money. And the thing I always tell people is like, if it was that easy, that's what everybody would be doing, right? And you'd be hearing about it. If you could just turn on the faucet, no one would have conventional jobs, right? The secret would be out pretty quick. So I always like to start there and tell people like there's more to the story than just the creative or the offer or the content. But in terms of what's working really now with creative is, counter to what I just said, low ticket offers are working really well. If you dial in the creative and the landing page, which is like kind of what we were talking about, is like there's 2 sides to the equation, but we're seeing reels are working incredibly well for people right now, but they need to be somewhat refined and somewhat dynamic. So like, if I know you'll take some of this podcast and slice into reels, those will do okay. But when you have really dynamic motion, something that like interrupts that scroll and grabs their attention, even if it's not relevant, we're working with someone, we just audited their account, and the dynamic movement is they move from one side of the frame to the other and then back to center. It's not that it needs to be like, the things you typically think of like, the people like breaking the soap you see on TikTok, you know what I'm talking about, where it's like, and then go into your message. It can be really just moving through the frame. So dynamic movement reels are working really well. Static images are still working great. I jokingly tell people, I'm not a video person. This is the most put together I'm going to be for the next 30 days. So it's all good. But I don't like to create a lot of videos. So I rely really heavily on static. And then if you do rely on video, it's really important that you have captions on, especially on Facebook and Instagram. A lot of content is being consumed silently. People are not watching the video or consuming the audio. They're just reading the captions on the screen, and that may draw them in to turn on the audio, but you really want to make sure that people can interact with your static or video content without having to have their audio turned up. TikTok's a little different. We don't do a ton with TikTok, but on that platform, people open it, they want to experience the audio. That is not the same experience on Facebook and Instagram 100% of the time.
Yeah, well, a lot of people are like traveling on a train, in a place where they don't want to have that volume turned up.
Exactly.
And so to have the captions on the screen makes complete sense.
Yes.
And the motion thing's really interesting because you see these flows through the algorithms. Like someone will do something that captures attention, and then every other creator will be like, "Oh, that worked for that person, so I'm going to do the same thing." It's like I think there's one recently where there's like a chocolate bar, like a pistachio chocolate bar or whatever it is, and
it's from Dubai.
Yeah, and they crack it in half, and then then they go into their thing, and it's like then everyone starts to do it. How long do those trends generally last for?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really depends on the trend, but most of them from an ads perspective, we have this joke in like the marketer space. We say like marketers ruin everything. So once it becomes commercialized, it really does fall off. There's a great example. There's a person on TikTok who did like the very demure, very mindful. And like that blew up. Everyone was saying, oh, this is so demure. This is so mindful. Well, then Netflix started doing it and Sephora put it in their subject line, and it just doesn't have the same appeal anymore. And that same creator, I was just talking with a friend about this because we were like, I like to create numbers. I'm a very analytical person, and like their views are down, their engagement is down, everything is down, because it's not that I don't think they didn't capitalize on the trend. I think they did a really great job. But those trends aren't forever, right? You essentially always, whether you're a content creator or an advertiser, have to be putting out new creative, whether it's trending or not, to maintain that status, right? So from an ads perspective, it's great in terms of it interrupts and it grabs attention, but it's bad because you don't want trending content. You want evergreen content, right? I work with clients where we've been running ads, the same ad for 2 years. And then I work with clients where we do rely on video or time-bound content where we can only run it for 2 weeks. And there's not one or better or worse than the other. You just have to be aware that both need to be involved.
Is there like a certain percentage of creatives that you do have the ability to run for 2 years? Because it feels like
it's
a lot
the minority.
It feels like a lot of advice that's out there is just continue to push new ads, new content, new captions, new grabs. But to hear that you can actually if one thing works, you can run it for 2 years. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think the big thing is we do cycle through a lot of creative. It also depends on your space. So to be really specific, the person we work with is an intuitive. They're a psychic, and it's just not a very saturated space. A lot of healers, intuitives, psychics don't advertise, and so we're in a really unsaturated advertising space. And the stuff that works really well are stock photos of crystals and tarot cards. So it works great, right? And when we do need to cycle it, we don't have to go searching for it. I can literally go buy a stock photo. Sometimes I buy them, sometimes I source them free. I like to buy them because most people won't spend the $10. And then it stands out a little more and no one else has seen it, from Unsplash or Pexels or those kinds of things. But yeah, we have stuff that lasts for a really long time, but that is definitely the minority. Most of the time we're cycling through things. And I think the big thing that people don't think about is that costs money. Right. So every time you cycle a new creative, it costs money. So depending on where you're at in your business, we will cycle through probably 10 to 20 creatives every 1 to 2 months. Okay. That's if I'm making them and I'm being really diligent. I don't like to make creative. I get really bored making creative. I'd rather write copy and click all the buttons. So we work with some designers, very a la carte. We don't subcontract any of our design work, but personally, I will subcontract my design work for our agency, just because I don't like to do it. So just to clarify, that's if I'm running an ad for one of my products, I don't subcontract our client.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's just for your agency rather than your clients.
Yeah. If I'm running, we have a Facebook ads boot camp that we run. So I don't like to constantly create new creative for it. So we have a couple great designers that I'll be I like to switch between a couple different ones because there's always a fresh aesthetic perspective. One designer is very Instagram worthy. One designer is very conversionally minded, and sometimes one beats out the other, but it's always worth testing different stuff.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned before about the low ticket item.
Yeah.
How does that work in terms of the numbers and the metrics? Do they generally cover their cost for the creative and the ad within the low ticket item? Is it a loss leader where they're losing money and then they make money on the upsell on the back end?
Great question. In terms of low ticket offers, for most of what we do, they're loss leaders. So I treat my low ticket offers like a loss leader. Most of our products that we sell consistently and regularly are under $100. So outside of our, services and agency, we have a low ticket offer at 25 with a $17 order bump and a $97 upsell. We have a $67 a month membership. And I always preface that because obviously people can buy annual, but it's the base offer is $67. So we do have people go annual on that, but like really the majority is I wouldn't call them micro transactions like an iPhone game, but small transactions compared to what you're typically seeing in the digital course space. And for us, it's a loss leader. So I like to think of our business with a low ticket offer as the front end in quarters. So I'm not trying to make money month to month. I'm trying to make money quarter to quarter.
Okay.
And so we do that through a live promotion in tandem with evergreen growth. So I think that to really go deeper on that, like a lot of people say like, oh, just run all your money to a low ticket offer. And we do that. We run ads directly to our low ticket offer, but we also build our list all the time. So the majority of our money goes into building our list, and that list, the initial sequence to new subscribers automatically promotes the low ticket offer, and the low ticket offer is being promoted, and we're retargeting new subscribers and sales page viewers. And that leads to our back-end membership where we're creating recurring revenue. Now, typically we will generate 0.5 to 0.7x return on ad spend month to month. And then once a quarter, we'll flip that all into profit through a live, we do a 5-day challenge bootcamp style launch. And that moves us right into profit for the quarter. Plus we bump up the monthly recurring revenue, and we've just been stepping up steadily for the last couple of years.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So it's all just about building that database, building.
Exactly. I'm a huge believer that you should just be building your list all the time, right? Because, attention is currency, and email is still great for getting attention these days. Even if people say it's dead or this doesn't work or that doesn't work, having the name and email in your database, even if it's just to remarket to them, is totally worth the money to me. And I mean, typically we don't see massive growth when we we'd call it a list scrub or a list clean. We'll remove our dead subscribers, but quarter to quarter, we'll see net growth of like 500 to 1,000 subscribers when you look at the people we're cleaning out. But we gain, 500 to 1,000 net subscribers a month. But we'll lose some of those to cold scrubbing. And we're okay with that, right? Because again, if we're looking in a quarter and we're profitable, who cares what the actual growth is if the business, the recurring revenue, and the client is consistent?
Yeah, I still feel like email is great because you have like social media platforms are great, but it's so easy to just swipe to the next thing or move to the next thing. Like there's so much abundance of content out there that the algorithm wants to keep you on the platform, so they want to make it easy for you to move on. Where email, like it's personal. It's like the first thing that you check in the morning. It's like where your work is. It's like where your attention needs to be. So it is still relevant because it's going directly to you and like where you need to check things for the day. So I don't know why it wouldn't work. Do you know what I mean?
Well, and what's great about email is you said it, like it's so personal, right? And most people are still checking their email, especially in the B2B space. Like we're always in our inbox. I work with a ton of people who are like, oh, I never check my email, but I see them on their phone, like getting the pings or checking their emails or flagging something for someone else. And even people who don't give us like a great email, there's still a high percentage of retargetability from an ads perspective, but we get to tell stories, right? So I am very much a storyteller in my emails, unless I'm promoting something. And then we think about people categorically. Some people do and some people don't respond to stories, but it's not crazy for me to go to an event and someone that I, not like I'm like uber famous, don't worry, the paparazzi's not there, but people will be like, oh, I listened to your podcast, and I get your emails. How's so-and-so? Like we have a hairless cat named Artie. So people have been like, how's Artemis doing? Or, like that's not unusual. And it really does build this sense of connection with people that you don't get on social media. You might follow someone on social media and you might see them and you talk to them or at them. But especially on social media, and I know this varies creator to creator, but it's not a two-way conversation, right? Whereas with email, we have made it a point, and granted, our email list is around 20,000. It's not unmanageable. But if somebody responds to my email, I respond back. I don't put that on my team to be like, send them a thumbs up. Like if somebody sends me a paragraph, I'm going to send maybe not a paragraph back, but I'm going to read what it says, respond appropriately, and like build that two-way connection and conversation. We sent out an email about being here and people were like, what a great email. This is so awesome. And we probably got, 10 replies. Like it's not an insurmountable amount of replying, but to each person you reply to, it's also not uncommon for us to be like, oh, I didn't think you'd reply, which is like mind blowing to think that people are shocked that you take the time to respond to their message. But That happens to us a lot. People, we have chat bots and we have conversations, but we will step in to add that human element. So from an ads perspective, it's great to grow your audience, but engaging that audience is something that to a point you can't really outsource, but it does create a really deep connection with the core of your audience.
Well, it gives them a reason to continue to follow your content as well. It's
Yeah.
not like, you're right, it's that moment of like, yeah, they've got 20,000 subscribers and they send one email and their assumption might be, well, there could be 20,000 people who are sending them an email and he's responded to me. Like there's that real personal touch of like, oh, I actually took the time out of his day. Like he seems like a busy guy, but he's personally got back to me. And I think there's a lot of value in that and building your audience. You mentioned before you only work with 8 to 10 businesses at one point in time. That's pretty cool. Is it, are you trying to just be really selective with who you work with? Are you just working with like bigger size businesses and want to like keep it from a capacity constraint at that level? Like what was the kind of thought process around doing it that way?
Yeah. So we in 2020, like early 2020, late 2019, I don't remember the exact date, but I basically had a ton of courses and offers, evergreen webinar, everything was coming along. And I was like, I hate this. It just felt very removed. We were really leaning into the automated model. Contrary to what I was just talking about, I felt like I wasn't connected to my audience. I felt like I was just constantly selling something new, totally a numbers game, not getting the same quality or quantity of testimonials. And I was like, this is great on paper, but this like is soul draining. Like I don't like this. And so we had a list of about 18,000 at the time. We burned it down to about 3,600 to 4,000, somewhere in that range. And I was like, if you want to stay on the list, I don't even know if I'm going to contact you, but it is what it is. Like, if you want to stay in, great. Maybe I'll come back to this. Maybe I won't. And we went to a full agency model. Okay. And we got up to about 20 clients. And I was like, wow, this is a new type of nightmare. And I just didn't enjoy it, just to be totally blunt. There's nothing inherently wrong with the agency model. But I didn't like really get to interact with all my clients. If I was interacting with my clients, it was like putting out fires. I didn't enjoy it. So after about 2021, about a year and a half later, I was like, okay, if I'm gonna go back to this, I'm gonna really think about how I do this. And we put really intentional things in place. And I started kind of like questioning things that were like commonplace in the market, which is like, oh, you need to have the 997 or 1997 core offer. Everything leads to that. And again, I'm not judging that model, but it felt very removed for me, right? It's like, how do I get all these people, hype them up to buy something that's like really epic, and then they get it? And so I started kind of posing this question, which is like, well, what if I just offered stuff that was worth that at a lower cost? And I had a lot of mentors and peers that were like, oh, you need to charge more and charge your worth. And, you have like money blocks. That's like a really hot button word in some of the spaces I'm in. They're like, you have money blocks if you can't charge more. And I was like, I don't think it is a money block. I think that I saw what we're now seeing very clear in the market 2 years ago, which is people are burnt out on spending $1,000 with minimal support, minimal access to be in a room with 100,000 people, and it works for some people and that's fine. For me, I'm like, I don't want to get to 5, 10, $20 million going, I don't even know who's buying my programs anymore, And so what we did was we created a really high touch environment. And so when I came back to this, I was like, I want people to feel great when they buy my products. I want people to get results when they buy my product. And so now we have like a really core offer suite that I feel good about. I don't feel bad about the pricing. I don't feel like people are getting taken advantage of. I feel like people aren't doubling down on their credit cards to be in our programs. We also put really good refund and guarantee policies, cancellation policies in place. And I just started asking myself, if we're going to be in this space, like how would I want to be treated, right? Really specific example, I joined this program that was like all about money management. And they were like, oh yeah, you're going to love it. It's great. It's awesome. And it was actually someone I knew personally. And I got in and I was like, oh, this is very rudimentary. Like we had a very blunt conversation that it wasn't going to be that. And they were like, I was like, this is just not what I was looking for. And a year later it renewed and I didn't even realize it was a subscription model, totally my bad, full ownership. But literally the day it renewed, I emailed them and I was like, hey, this is really rudimentary. I don't need this. And they're like, well, you had to tell us 7 days before it rebuilds. I was like, well, you didn't tell me it was going to rebuild. And they're like, no, you're right. We did it. But you didn't cancel within 7 days. So I was like, that's like, I don't want to feel like that. I don't want my people to feel like that. Right. And so I started like really thinking like, if I'm in that community for a year and I don't want to be there and they don't want me there because I've now complained, no one wins in that scenario, right? The only person who wins is the person running the program's wallet, right? And it's like, that's not serving anybody. So we do things in our membership where it's like, if somebody cancels, which they can do in their portal, we process it manually, because if we've missed the day by 48 hours, we refund them. If they say, oh, I didn't realize it was going to renew, we cancel them. We let people pause their membership. We've had people who have like very serious life events happen and they're like, I love the membership, but it's just not a good time right now. I want to come back in 6 months. And we say, hey, we can just hold your spot at your current rate for 6 months. And then we take the initiative to let them know when the pause is going to be over, let them know when their annual billing is going to happen. And so ultimately, the original question that I've now rambled on about was, why 8 to 10 clients? Because I played the agency game, I played this game, and that lets me really just kind of play in the trenches with what's working without feeling like I have that heavy burden of an agency, while still really serving people in a high touch capacity. So it creates baseline revenue that we pump right into advertising, and it also creates the content that serves our community at large.
Well, it feels like you can provide a lot more value from you personally back to these guys, rather than this is just another course, or this is how to do it, or this is, you're just another number that we've got 1,000 of you, and sorry, your membership's renewed, and we'll refund it in 7 days or whatever it might be. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels like it's a much more personal relationship, and I think sometimes that's what people really, really want. And so you can charge, I don't know if you do, but you could charge a higher price for that, just to be like, hey, we're going to give you more value. We're going to give you that personal touch. We're going to work with you directly rather than just being another number, which I think is super valuable. You mentioned there you had mentors and like people who are coaching you and all that sort of stuff. How far down that rabbit hole have you gone with the whole mentorship?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've spent a lot of money.
Okay.
And I'm happy to talk specific numbers. I mean, I spent $100K to be in a mastermind for 5 years, 20K a year. And one of the things that I've really learned is I don't mind the mastermind model. I really don't. I've met some incredible people. I've had some incredible experiences. And I think when masterminds are done well and correctly, they're great. The things that have always thrown up a flag for me is like, number one, when you pay for one thing and get something else, right? So I've had that happen in masterminds where they're like, oh yeah, this is going to be amazing, and you're going to get all this stuff. And then you get there and you're like, this is just a room in a hotel, right? Like, there's nothing exciting about this, right? And yeah, you do pay for the expertise of the person, and you do pay for the community, but I've also been in masterminds where like we've done escape rooms, and you network and you connect with people, and dinner is catered. And again, I'm not saying that I need like this lavish bougie experience for it to be worth it. But when you're charging, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, there, I believe there should be an expectation, right? And I have seen a lot of growth in that market space of, well, they're charging 20K, so I can charge 20K. And it's not a 20K experience. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm more intentional about what I buy now. What's funny is I feel like the more I've made, the less I've spent on mentorship, or I'm really intentional about how I choose mentorship, which is like, I'm looking for peer mentorship and feedback. I'm looking for feedback and mentorship to and from my team. I wouldn't say my team mentors me as much as I get feedback and treat them as a sounding board in some capacities. I mean, they're incredible people, and I'll be like, what do you think? Like, what are your thoughts, right? I also am really keen on buying something for $30 to $50 that solves an immediate problem, right? I think it's really easy to get sold into like this, if you're just in the room, you'll get to the next level, right? And I spent a lot of time in those rooms, and sometimes it got me to the next level, but ultimately that's a decision you make, right? So I'm not anti-mastermind. I am just pro setting clear expectations, making an experience worth what you charge it for it, which is always subjective anyway, and getting really clear on what you need, right? There's a couple of masterminds that I've eyed up in the last couple of years, and I've been like, they just don't serve the need that I have right now, right? Like, our membership and our churn is our number one thing right now. So I looked at a mastermind that was around membership and churn, and I was like, well, I think it was like $12K for a year, but it was a room of 100 people. And I was like, that's not worth it to me, right? My goal is to talk with one expert specifically on churn and retention, how to improve our membership model, increase customer acquisition, and decrease customer acquisition cost. And I don't see that in this room, right? And, baby business me would have been like, look at all these cool people in the room, 12K, what a steal. And now I'm really in a space where I'm like, does that solve the immediate problem? Right. And so I'm more likely to spend, like, I just bought this wonderful program. It was $37. and it was like how to launch with a wait list. And we were reintroducing a program that we'd done in the past at a new price point and a new offer. And I was like, what if we did a wait list? Like, and I don't need to spend $12K to be in a room to learn how to do a wait list, but I spent $37, loved the templates, loved the process, made it my own, built in some of the things that I knew around advertising, and we had a $20K weekend, you know? Wow. So it's like, those are the things that I'm leaning into more and more. And admittedly, I think part of that is because I did do the high ticket masterminds, right? So I've been in the room where you hear the strategies and you hear behind the scenes and you see what's going on. And there's definitely value to that, but I don't think there's value in always, all the time, 24/7, paying 20, 30K to be in a room with other people. I've learned that for me personally, that's an ego thing, right? And there's absolutely times where it serves me, and there's absolutely times that I crave community. And that doesn't have to cost 30K a year. If you want it to, and it speaks to you, and you want to go to the desert and be in a luxury hotel and spend 3 days doing it, no judgment. It's awesome. I love a luxury experience. My partner and our friend Ange makes fun of me because I don't like to fly economy. It's like one of the weird quirks that I have. It's not even a weird quirk. It's just something that I've stepped into, you know? I don't like to fly economy. So when I go places, I do my best to not be an economy flyer. And so to me, that's worth it. If you're not flying economy as being in a 30K mastermind, great. Nothing wrong with that. I just learned that for me, that wasn't a decision that was being made from a place of, I don't like flying economy. It was being made from a place of, I don't like not feeling like I belong in the room, and I don't need to be in the room that I want to try and fit into.
Yeah, it was just an ego thing. Like I'm here and I can pay for it, and I'm amongst this cohort.
100%.
And often all they're teaching is like, yeah, I mean, it's a value, but there's sometimes all there is teaching is like, oh, there's a software out there for $37 that can solve the problem that you're looking for. You know what I mean? Where you can just do a bit of research online and find a way to solve it. What about like a lot of people that I've talked about, masterminds? There's been a few who have said like, yeah, it's really helped our business. Like I've learned a whole bunch of people, but ultimately the best masterminds that they had been to was just like, you know, that maybe of the bigger 100 people in the room, there was 10 people who they really got on with, and they created a little mastermind themselves, and they go away to Bali, you know, for 5 days or whatever. And like each of them has to say something or teach them something. They're all in the same niche or industry, and that's kind of really done that. Have you had any experience with like just making the smaller groups?
I've been in some smaller groups and some peer masterminds. What I have found that I will give kudos to the mastermind that you pay for is people tend to show up a little more intentionally, I guess is the word. Like I'm in a peer mastermind right now where we meet once a month, and I'm just like, if I'm not available, I'm not available. Like it's just not top priority. Now, granted, that one is very loosely structured, which I think is the exact thing I'm saying is like the structure can be so loose that there's no incentive to show up. And then if people aren't showing up, then the group kind of crumbles, and then it's hard to maintain. But I've absolutely been part of like small peer masterminds where we go to New York for a weekend, or, you know, we meet somewhere, or, you know, those have been great. And honestly, those are often better in a way. Kind of to your point, it's kind of like, you know, family is great, but your chosen family is like the people you picked, right? So you pay to be part of this family, this mastermind group of 50, 100, you know, 200, whatever. But you choose who you want to be in that room of 5 to 10 people with. And that does really make a difference. I also think that what I've learned is like, I like to do small retreats and events, whether I'm speaking or attending, because I just connect with people, right? And it's not necessarily the stuff that's happening on stage where the good stuff is happening. It's the conversations in between. Like I was just at our friend Ange's retreat in Bali, and she said something to me in the pool, and I was like, oh, that's great. I'm going to try that. And we're onboarding a new client using that process. I was like, this is great, right? And it's like, yeah, I spoke at the event, and when I speak at an event, I like to attend as much of it as possible too. So like I sat in on all the sessions, and I took the notes, and I listened to the presentations. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing I implemented and made money on so far was something that she said, you know, in like a 30-second passing in the pool.
In the pool.
So that's why I really do value a peer mastermind more than like a structured mastermind. But again, that benefit exists in both places. It's just a matter of, do you want to do the legwork of bringing people together? Do you want to just be in the room for an event? Do you want to be in a year-long commitment? What do you want to pay? Right?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like all the value just comes from like showing up and being in the same location as those people. Like if you weren't in a pool in Bali with Angie, you wouldn't have had that conversation.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I know you were speaking, so it wasn't like a mastermind that you were paying for, but like just being in the same room with those people and getting to network and get close to them is probably where resolves, right?
Right. And so like, even if like, maybe to backpedal a little bit, is like, that is the value of a 30K mastermind, right? Is anyone there can pay 30K, right? Now, that doesn't always qualify people the best, I'm sure you know. But somebody who can spend 30K a year on a mastermind is also, I wouldn't say a different caliber. They're just at a different income level, right? And there are different, like from my experience, like 100K versus 250 versus 500, it's very different problems or conversations that you're having. So there's absolutely that benefit to it. And I still will die on the hill that like sometimes it's an ego decision.
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned a little bit about team before and like not palming things off to the team.
Yeah.
But how big is the team?
So our team is relatively small. We have myself, our OBM, Jessica, our junior ads manager, Heather. We subcontract a girl, Vanessa, who is just so smart to support our membership. And then I will hire people like a la carte. There's like a sales page designer who will hire like one-off a couple times a year. We have some like those graphic designers, but those people are not on the team. They're very much like contracted a la carte for a specific outcome. So the team is small. I would say 3 core, 4 if you count our subcontractor. I do, because she is Vanessa's amazing, and yeah, we're a small but mighty team.
That's all you need for 8 to 10 clients. Hey.
Yeah, it's great. And that manages both sides of the business.
Okay.
So that's not just the agency. Jessica, the OBM, is kind of crosses over both. Vanessa is exclusively in the membership side, and Heather is exclusively in the agency side.
Okay, that makes sense. When you started and scaled to 20 clients, was the team bigger? Like, has it moved into
smaller?
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, when we had 20 clients, it was me, Jessica, and Heather.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Far out. I love it. I love having a lean team. Is that the goal? Like, you really happy around sort of where the business is at? You've got, your specific clients that you work with.
Yeah.
Team's really lean, and how you want to operate moving forward.
Yeah. I think I like having a lean team. I do. And part of the reason I like having a lean team is that everything's very agile. So I can be like, oh, let's push it back a week, or let's push it up a week. Right. And those are easy decisions to make. I don't feel like I need to consult the CMO and the CEO and the CFO and then me as the owner. It's like, what do we all think? Excuse me. I don't necessarily think that we're anywhere near that level anyway. So I'm sure that there's some internal work to be done around like, what is a lean team versus what is a big team? And having a lean team, I just love it because I really get to know my team. I love my team. I tell Jessica all the time, I'm just a puppet. You pull the strings. Like, they know. I'd like to think they know how much I appreciate them, and I couldn't do it without them, right? Like, even when I'm here, like, they're making things happen, And so I just have such immense gratitude for my team. And so everything that I do, from, like sending gifts every day, like we're all in Slack, but we talk a lot with gifts. Like, that's fun. And that's what I want. I don't want to go as far as to be like, we're one big family, like the HR line, but we really do like each other. And it's like, we have this great rapport with everybody there. And that means everybody takes really radical ownership of everything. Right. And so nothing is ever fatal, I don't think, that a team member can decide. And so I have my team on really like open boundaries, in a sense of like, they can go, no, I don't have the capacity for that. Yeah, I have the capacity for that. No, I need help. Yes, I do need help. And so I think that is harder to do when you're not lean. It's like, you don't get to know everybody. But like, we know birthdays, we know anniversaries, we get to keep track of that stuff. So yeah, I do enjoy having a lean team. I think if we got much bigger, I could see us getting to 5 to 6 people and probably capping around 1.5, 2 million. And I would be okay with that. Tangent to that conversation is like, I had a really great conversation with a friend of mine, and they were like, when is it actually enough? Like, at what point are you building to build? And at what point are you building because you're content? Right. And I think that is a really easy trap to get caught in. But like, if I look around, like, I'm spending 3 weeks in Bali in Australia. My partner and we're building, like, I wouldn't say our dream home, but it's like our next step up home. It's something we've wanted to do for a long time, is build a home. We broke ground a few weeks ago. So we got the land, we paid cash for the land. Like, we're in a really good position. So I think, there's definitely like a whole conversation around like, oh, well, you don't always have to push harder to grow bigger. But I do think you do have to do things differently to go bigger, right? And it's like, if one of those things is a team of 10 or 20 people, that's just not what I'm interested in. And that's okay. But I think having that lean team, having that connection with my team, and really knowing their personalities is super fun too. One of my team members, our OBM Jessica, she lives right now 25 minutes away, and we've seen each other twice this year. We see each other every day on Zoom. But the other day I was like, oh, we should probably get together for dinner. And she was like, yeah, but not for a couple of months. I'm too introverted to think about it, right? And I'm like, I love that. That's just like so fun to know that like we have this flexibility and we have this relationship. And Jessica loves to go camping. She has like a camper they just bought, and she'll be like, hey, do you care if I work from the camper on Friday and Thursday? I'm like, no, I don't care, right? And I think when you start getting to a bigger team, like there also has to be, those boundaries that everybody has to sit with, right? And I like the flexibility that myself and my team have. I don't care if you check in at 6 p.m. as long as it's done by 9 a.m. the Friday, right? And I do think you lose some of that flexibility with a bigger team too.
Yeah, because if you've got a bigger team and you give one person leeway, then everyone expects leeway. Where if you know and trust and know birthdays and anniversaries and what people are up to and what they like, as long as they get their work done, like sure, go work from the camper van. I don't care. Like as long as it's done by the deadline, we're happy. And that's a really important point. I think like when I started in business, it's like, you get to this like certain revenue number and you're like, oh, I've done really well. I'm really happy with where we're at. And then I surround myself with these, very wealthy, great business people, and they're always just pushing for more. Yeah. And so I've kind of felt like I've been stuck in that of like, oh, well, I need to do more. I need to go bigger. I need to build a big team. I need to do this. I need to do that. And it's very easy to get caught in that trap where like right now, if I look at the business and kind of where we're at, like it's at a great level. We're not like over capacity. We're not overextended. We don't have too many overheads. Like everything's running really, really well. And it's like, well, I've had to come to that conclusion and make that decision of like, well, I don't need to scale like crazy. Like we're happy with where things are at. So why don't we just continue to do more and better of what we're currently doing? And look, if the business continues to grow and does need to scale at some point in time, that's fine. But not being forced to push, I think is a really important decision to make. Is that something that like, have you been at both extremes, or have you just gotten to a certain level and been like, this is where we want to stay?
Yeah, I mean, and I know I told you before we started recording, like I'm very happy to talk numbers. So we, in the first year of business, like official LLC, QuickBooks, all of that, where we tracked everything accurately, we did about 100K. Second year, we did about 300. Third year, we did about 500. And then we dropped back down to 300 and stayed between about 350 to 450 pretty much until this year. Okay. This year, we'll break $500,000 again. Nice. And I think part of that is that very much like we did have that push mentality, right? So year one, whatever it takes, like just break that 100K. And granted, that would have been 2015. Like 100K did go a lot farther in 2015. And I was a 22-year-old. I was in a master's program, so I was like, dude, this is money. Like I'm set for life. And then the next year, I joined a mastermind, and then I pushed really hard that fourth year, and then that would have taken us into 2018. Stalled out because we had just really pushed really hard, and that kind of brought us back down. And then that 2019, 2020 year is like when I was like, oh, burn it all down. So, not that I need to justify why our numbers fluctuate. Everybody's numbers fluctuate. I think that's the other thing that doesn't get talked about enough is everyone's like, we're not out there yelling like my revenue's about the same as last year, but like, that's not a bad thing. Like most businesses would kill for stability, right? Especially if you're not like a Starbucks or an Apple, you're not gunning for growth for the shareholders. You're gunning for growth because someone told you need to, or because you're trying to achieve something. But this year we're basically going to crack 500. And then next year I'd like to crack 650 to 750. And then the goal is 2026 to cross seven figures. Like that's our game plan. But to your question, we won't do that at the expense of like, we need 10 people and we need to spend X thousands of dollars on ads, even though it like feels crappy, and like we'll do whatever it takes. And I will say that entire time, sans 1 year, and it was actually one of the years that we were like really pushing. Our profit margin is really healthy, so it's like as long as we have a healthy profit margin, I'm happy, right? And then there's cool things like, you can be smart with your money, and you can do things business related. Like when I speak at Angie's conference, I get to write off my plane ticket. That's very kosher. That's very above board. Like little things like that. You can also be smart with your business income. but I won't, but I think the first 4 years I was like more, 7 figures. And the further I've done this, the more I'm like, yeah, don't get me wrong. Like I've had to learn that there's also two extremes in not wanting more, which is like, well, I'm totally content and comfortable, so I'm not going to push myself to grow or learn. And then there's like, I'm so okay with this that I'll just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, not from contentness, but from like, it's got to keep working, right? So you stop innovating. And so I think you can hit those extremes within the extreme. So for me, what I've found is like, I've just stopped looking at things that don't really matter, right? And so it's like, we're building a house, we can cover the mortgage, I get to travel a lot. My partner works a full-time job because, well, not full-time, 35 to 40 hours a week, but typically closer to 30 to 35. But he likes that, you know, he enjoys work. Like I can sit in my office all day and never see anybody, and it's a great day. I'm a total hermit. Like this is the outing of the year for me. But he really enjoys that connection. And so I mentioned that because for us, travel is a really big thing, but he gets about 4 to 6 weeks of travel a year. So I will do some traveling where I'll go somewhere for an event or a weekend like this. I'm here for 3 weeks by myself. Typically, I do not go that long. He has already informed me this is way too long. But you know, we like to travel. So, you know, we did Europe for 3 weeks. We do Universal Studios in Florida. They're expanding the park. We're very excited. We bought our tickets the day they opened. We have friends in Arizona that we'll go visit. Next year, we're also going on a cruise, you know, like, so that's our thing. And so it's like, yeah, all of that's happening and it's paid for and we're not like drowning in, you know, credit card debt to do it. So it's like, this works, you know, this feels good to me. So yeah, I do want to grow. And I think kind of what I was saying is like, I don't want to get complacent. So yeah, I do want to see growth. And that was a really hard thing to like come to terms with, is like, where's that middle ground of like, no, I don't need to grow, but I'm also not sacrificing the value of growth, right? Because you do have inflation, you do have cost creep, you do have lifestyle creep, and those things are going to happen. So now I look at things through the lens of this and more without sacrificing. So, you know, I'm not like a wildly spiritual person, but I'm always like, you know what? I think that if you do the right thing and you're a good person and you really care about your audience and you really value the things that you create, that there will be some level of providing from the universe for you. And so I'm always like, you know what? Thank you, universe. More, please. But not at the expense of my health, happiness, or sanity.
Yeah, those are the things that always come first, hey? And you want to just enjoy life and have a good lifestyle, which sounds like you are.
Yeah.
Was this your first business or have you done business stuff beforehand?
That's a fun question. So I was I really made my first dollar online when I was 12. And the reason I know that is because in the States, I should not admit this, but I say it all the time. Like the more I say it, the more I'm like, this is not a good story to share. But you have to use your social security number to pay taxes when you have income online. And when I was 12, I was like, hey, Dad, what's your social security number? And then he got a taxed 1099 at the end of the year. And I was like, oops, I made some money. And he was like, well, good on you, man. Like you made good money. And then the next year, 13, you can use your own social to pay taxes in the States. So I used to do all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, back in that would have been like the 2000s, early 2000s, you could like fill out surveys, and I did. And you could like, there was this one website, I remember it very vividly. You would click on ads and you would get a penny per ad, right? Penny per click. But then you could recruit people under you. You could like rent the referrals. And I basically like learned the system so good that I would like buy the referrals with the money I earned from clicking on the ads, recruit the referrals, you rent them for a month, and then you like prune them, and then you keep the best performing referrals and you repeat. And I made like $8,000 that year when I was like 14. And my parents were like, what are you doing on the internet? Like you need, like, this is not, something's up here. So, I mean, I've done stuff like that. And then as I kind of moved into like my teens, 16, 17, I kind of learned about like freelancing. So I was like, oh, you can just write, you can't do this as much anymore, but back then you could just like write an article. I used to work for this guy, John, and he was like, oh, just write these SEO content articles, which I had like no really concept of what they were, but he's like, oh yeah. So I didn't know, like unbeknownst to me, right? There's always a middleman. I was the middleman, which was he would have me write these articles. It's like Green Roofing Solutions Toronto. Well, then he was like selling the local leads to roofing companies. And I was like, man, I should have just published the articles myself in retrospect. But I worked for him for a couple years, and then I started flipping websites. So once I realized, oh, wait a second, he's just using this to rank for content, I could use my own stuff. I started making some content sites and flipping those. I did MLM for a while, which like, I'm really not pro anti-MLM in retrospect. I mean, I have to give kudos. That taught me a lot about personal development. The particular company that I joined was like, you do your 15 minutes of personal or professional development every day. That's just a non-negotiable. So I read a lot. I read a lot of books. And about 4 years into that, I was like, well, hang on. If I'm building someone else's company, I could just be doing this myself. And so I did have a vegan food blog. I'm not vegan anymore. Don't boo me. But I had a vegan food blog for about 4 years, 3 years. And we built that up to, in the first 6 to 12 months, about 25 to 30,000 hits a month using Pinterest. And then I was like, what if I advertise this? And so we started doing webinars and selling products. And then people were like, how are you doing this? Like, you're just some random dude on the internet selling these vegan boot camps at the time, like 21-day vegan boot camp. And Periscope came out, and I started talking about it. And I was like, oh, maybe this is something. So people started hiring me to run their ads. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. I mean, we actually had some training around Periscope. I'm really dating myself here. Which doesn't even exist anymore, but it was like the live stream version of Twitter. And like people were like, dude, how are you getting clients from Periscope? So I remember I was in Starbucks and people were like, you gotta tell us how you're doing this. You gotta tell us how you're doing it. And I was like, okay, fine. If you really want to know, I'm going to drop a PayPal link. It's $97. I've gotten 4 clients. That's all I can show you. And we made $1,300 while I was at Starbucks on a Periscope live stream, which was just like wild. But that really showed me the possibility of all the things you could do. And so we did that for a little while. We really came back to like online courses, digital advertising, consulting side of things over the years. But yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of different things that have brought me here. And the nice thing is that everything is stacked. You know, I think that everything I've done to this point has taught me a lot, whether it was the value of referral marketing from that crazy website, or, you know, the value of SEO and intentional tagging when you're creating content, or, you know, the value of personal development. Like, all of that has brought me to where I am now. And, you know, like I said, we'll do about 500 this year, 500K revenue, and we'll probably be at a 20 to 25% profit margin. And I'm like, this is great. You know, I pay myself pretty well. I'm super happy. And so it's just a good place to be. I get to meet cool people, do cool podcasts, you know, and it's just, you know, the world is just full of opportunity, and it's, you know, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds crazy how all of those things have kind of like led you to where you are now.
Yeah.
And it seems like you've been such an entrepreneur since a kid, like since 14 or
Totally.
12, was it?
Yeah, totally.
You had to use your dad's social security number.
Yeah.
But that's cool. Like that's all part of the experience and learning to do things online. Like I'm the same. I used to play RuneScape when I was a
Totally.
kid. And I ended up creating someone hacked my account through, I shouldn't say, I'm the same. I've got a story which I shouldn't tell people, but I do anyway. Someone hacked my account when I was on RuneScape, and I got so annoyed that I was like, well, I'm going to set up my own website to hack other people's account with RuneScape. And so I would get people to sign up to this account, and they'd enter their RuneScape password, and all of a sudden I could log into their account and then like trade all the stuff to my account. I was like, I love it. Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of like how I learned to code and do websites and all that sort of stuff. So it sounds like everyone's kind of got this story of like where they first started and got into where they are today.
So awesome.
It's just crazy. So of the contractors and the full-time guys that you've got now, what was your approach to like hiring people? Have you hired friends and family? Have you hired different people?
I've hired family once. Okay. For a project. I have a family member who's an executive assistant, and I had to schedule some travel and an event, and I was like, here's $1,000, just organize everything. That's the only time I've ever hired family. And when I hired that family member, I told them point blank, like, when I'm on the clock, you know, though, I'm like, when we're doing business, like, you're not XYZ to me, you are literally fulfilling this role. Anything I say in that capacity, like outside of like hurtful or personal things, like that's not, it just is what it is. So if you can't handle that, like, don't say yes to this. And that went fine. But my OBM now, I hired off Craigslist for $12 an hour in that would have been 2017.
Gosh.
And I met at Starbucks. And I remember, this is so dumb, but I was like, I don't have an office. I need you to come to my house. So crazy in retrospect, 2 hours a week. And I was like, but my partner's there, so like, I'm not a threat, I swear. He's my husband, but at the time I was like, oh yeah, my partner, Simon, he's a man. So it's totally safe. You're totally safe to come to work in my kitchen 2 hours a week. And she did. And she's been great. She's been with me it'll be 8 years in November.
Oh, wow.
And we do not pay her $12 an hour anymore, full transparency. But she's wonderful. The other person we work with on our team full-time is, or I'm sorry, not full-time, but retainer is Heather. We hired her off Indeed. And Jessica actually did first round interviews. And I was like, just bring me the best people. And she's now our junior ads manager. Vanessa, I hired through a Facebook group. So I am in a couple of Facebook groups where I really value the community there. And we do a 5-day Facebook ads boot camp. And part of that boot camp, we charge $25 for it. But if you submit copy and creative, you will get personal audit of it. So we'll personally be like, rewrite this, change this. This is non-compliant or it is compliant. And I was like, we did one with 500 people. And I was like, this is exhausting. I can't do this and manage a launch. And so I created a job post and I was like, I will pay X amount for 5 days of your time, project rate. And Vanessa was like, I'll do it. I was like, great, checks out. I'm very much, this is so counter to what everybody says, but I'm very much an intuitive hirer. I meet with people. If it feels good, if it feels aligned, I hire them. If they do a bad job, I don't keep them, right? Vanessa, I think I talked to her for 20 minutes and I was like, yeah, you seem like you know what you're doing. Like, I'm game. Like, I think I was like, send me your first 3 copy audits so I can make sure it's like on par. And then in the back of my mind, I was like, well, if it doesn't work, I'll just be like, hey, here's the money. Don't worry about it. They were amazing. She did phenomenal work. And so we did the same launch about 4 months later. And I was like, hey, are you still available? Like, I'd love to hire you again. She's like, oh yeah, this is great. And then after that launch, we were running our membership. And I was like, man, there are just like, if I could humble brag, it's not even humble, it's just bragging, but our membership is very active. And so we can get anywhere from like 20 to 30 posts a day that we have to respond to. Not a crazy amount, but there's only 400 people in there. So you could do the math on that. We're managing 300 plus posts a month. And our guarantee is that if you post in there, you get a response from me or someone on the team. And now, used to just be me. And I was like, hey, Vanessa, do you have any interest in supporting us with our membership? Obviously, it's a little more ads than copy focused, but people are always asking for copy support. And she's like, oh yeah, I've managed like probably $50 to $100 million in ads. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, oh yeah, I used to work in a lot of corporate accounts. I know a ton about advertising and compliance is really like my jam. And I was like, can we retain you like every week? She was like, yeah, let's do it. So I feel like a lot of people that I've hired, even Heather, have been very organic. Like, we're not there. I don't think there's a secret, and that all sounds like roses and good times, but we also did hire somebody that I worked with for about 6 months, maybe a year. I don't remember exactly, but I remember a year in, I was in a mastermind and I was like, hey, I just feel like their heart's not in it. Like, not that anyone's heart's really ever in it as much as yours is, as the owner, but I was like, I don't know. I just feel like everything's been slow. They're not really responding the same. Like, it just feels like the energy has shifted, and this was one of the best things I ever took from my mastermind. I had a mentor tell me, like, your business will only grow to the level of tough conversations you're willing to have. So I was like, hey, let's have a meeting. And I just said, hey, I feel like your heart's not in it. She was like, you're totally right. I don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, cool. Can you give me 30 days to just get a replacement in? She was like, absolutely. You've been great to work with. Another reason to value your people. She was like, yeah, of course. I would never just like abandon you. It's all good. But we had that happen too. But our core team has all been very organic, very like traditional and non-traditional. We brought people in through Facebook groups, Craigslist, Indeed. And then I do get a lot of design work on Upwork, but I don't hire on Upwork. I get referred to people on Upwork. So I have a couple of peer masterminds where I'll be like, who's got a good designer? Who's got something for this? Our sales page designer I found in a Facebook group too. And I am just if, again, second humble brag, I'm the lowest key person to do work for. I'm literally like, if you get it to me by this day at this time, it's fine. I don't care. I literally could care less. I don't care if you want to take a vacation in the middle of your work week, as long as you get me the deliverables when we say we're going to have them. I really do not care. So I have a sales page designer where he'll be like, what do you want me to do? I'm like, just design the sales page. Can you get it to me in 10 days? And he'll be like, well, I need 14. I'll be like, great, 14 it is. Like, let's do it. But I share that because that sales page designer, we recently were doing a launch and I got some feedback from a consultant we were working with. And he was like, you need to change the sales page to do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, my software doesn't do that. And he's like, well, if you switch to this, and I was like, oh, that's what my designer usually works in. We won't get bogged down in the semantics, but I was like, can you turn this around in 24 hours? And he was like, dude, for you, absolutely. Right. And again, I think that comes back to the value of relationships, valuing people, paying on time, being a good human. Like, people will jump through hoops for you. And I'm like, I always want people to feel seen and appreciated. So like, when he was like, he's like, I'll have to work late tonight, but I can do it. I was like, well, let me at least buy you dinner. Like, charge me whatever the sales page is. I'm going to send you a DoorDash gift card. So you don't, he's like, I'll just DoorDash and stay home. And I was like, totally, let me get your dinner. Right. When we did our last launch, I set up gift baskets to show up at my team's house halfway through the launch for everybody on the team, that was working on the launch. Even the person who wasn't working on the launch, because I'm like, you're holding down the fort while we're all doing this and we appreciate you. So, I mean, it's little things like that I think people just forget about, right? And it's like, it's really easy to get caught in the day-to-day grind. And I don't think everybody's incentivized by a gift basket. That's not the takeaway. But we do Christmas bonuses every year. It's like, we want people to feel seen and appreciated in our company. So we find people from all these random places, but at the end of the day, they all come together to a place where they feel appreciated and seen.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you give them value and appreciate them the whole way through. Yeah. And so, like, why wouldn't they, if there's something that needed to be done urgently, why wouldn't they do that for you and deliver for you and have that, give it back to you? That's so nice. And it sounds like everyone you have kind of trialed in a way as well. It's not like you've just hired and, like, I know you said, like, if the intuition feels right, you would hire them and see how they go, but then fire quickly as well. Totally. Which doesn't sound like there's been a lot of those, but it does seem like you have asked them to do something or asked for copy or asked for something to begin with just to see what their work's like and then hire them and see how you go.
Absolutely. I think everybody gets trialed in some capacity. I start almost everyone on either a project or a probationary period. So as much as I'm like, intuition is great, I also have fail safes in place. So like, and what's funny is putting those fail safes in place sometimes will actually save us from money or hiring. We actually for Ange's conference this week, they were like, oh, we need your presentation in PowerPoint format. I'm like, great. I'm designing it in Canva. I feel like a boss. I'm like, this is great. I download it as a PowerPoint and I'm like, the whole thing is ruined. And I'm like, I just don't have the mental space to like deal with this. So I went into a Facebook group that I trust and I was like, I've got 48 hours, $200. I feel like that justifies this. If it does, great. If not, let me know anyway. I always, as a side note, when I hire from a group, I say, do not DM me. Please just give me your high level information in the comments. Then if they DM me, I know I don't want to work with them. Not because I mind the DM. One, because it tells me there's a lack of respect for boundaries right from the jump. And two, it tells me they didn't read the post. Or three, they're desperate, and no judgment, but desperate people don't always make the best decisions. So I put that right in my post, but I was like, hey, $200, need this in 24 hours because I've waited till the last minute to submit this. And everyone was like, oh, why don't you just download them as an image and drag them into PowerPoint? And I was like, you can do that? And 5 minutes later, I'd solved the problem, right? So there's also value in with those trials or processes, and especially with Facebook group hiring, sometimes you find out there's a better solution. And I'm always open to that. I'm always open to someone saying, no, you don't need to do that, just do this.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. You mentioned before you had the Facebook group where you got like about 20 posts a day that you need to respond to, 20 or 30 posts.
Yes, the membership.
So that's the membership. So you've got a agency side of the business and the membership side of the business as well. What's the split in terms of revenue for that? Like, does the agency side bring in most and then the...
Yeah, so there's technically a third arm of our business, which is like consultancy, which would be like VIP days, one-off consulting sessions. I do I say coach salting. Like, I tell my clients, like, look, I don't really consider myself a coach. I'm probably going to give you prescriptive advice about what I would do in your situation. Take it or leave it. We have the no guarantee of results and, non-liability clauses in our contract. I'm just sharing what's worked for me. Take it or leave it. But I also have been doing this long enough that I can tell when someone's like just in their head, So I would say 20% of the time I'm like, do you really think that's the problem? And 80% of the time I'm like, go put in this strategy, go do this thing. This is what I'd recommend from an ads perspective. So the consultancy brings in about 30-ish% of the revenue, maybe 20 on some months. The membership brings about 30% of the revenue. And then the agency brings about 30% of the revenue. Okay. And then there's like kind of like random odds and ends, which would be like affiliate marketing, affiliate payments. Sometimes people will pay me to speak, those kinds of things where it's like, I would consider those the minority, but they still pay you.
Yeah, 100%. Well,
so it's like a pretty healthy split. We're not relying on any individual income stream for the health of the business.
I was going to say it's pretty comfortable because like if, a major client falls out or whatever, it's only a percentage of the 30%, so you're quite comfortable.
Exactly.
Then you've got all the memberships who, you potentially could find someone in there to replace one of the bigger companies that you're working with, plus you got these other things as well. Yeah. And then the mailing list that you've got as well, where you had about 20,000 people, is that just a distribution? Is it just getting...
Yeah, it's a distribution list. So there's 19,500 on it. When I look, I'm an obsessive numbers checker. Fun fact about me, we have a spreadsheet for everything and everything goes in the spreadsheets. So I check my numbers every day. But when I checked this morning, we had like 19,500 and some change. So that is just our general mailing list. It contains our customers. It contains our members. But I would say 85 to 90% of that is just distribution.
Okay.
Listen to the podcast, read the emails. We're going to be opening doors to one of our programs in a couple of weeks. So like we're building the wait list for it, that kind of thing.
Okay. And have you got a low ticket offer at the moment?
Yes. So we do a 5-day boot camp to launch our membership on Facebook ads. It's $25 to join. If you don't join live, you can buy the recordings for $25.
Okay.
And then the recordings have an order bump, an upsell, and then sell into the membership evergreen.
Okay. That makes sense.
So what's nice about it is with advertising, things change really quickly. Not as much as you'd think, but still pretty quickly. And we joke internally, we're like, people panic when a button color changes. They'll be like, yeah, but this won't work because it used to be green and now it's blue. And I'm like, it says the same thing. It's fine. But I totally get it, right? It's like, you don't want to, especially with ads, you don't want to just throw money away. So when something doesn't look exactly the same, people panic. But because we do these 3 to 4 times a year, we have this self-updating program that I don't have to go update all the time. So every time we do the boot camp, we then add a video that, and we just implemented this in our evergreen version. It's like a 5-minute video that they're forced to watch. It's like, we put this on the sales page. We're very transparent about it, but we're like, this is a recording. There is no Facebook group. There is no coaching or support because you're buying it evergreen. We do it live 4 times a year. You'll be invited to the next one as a member of the evergreen, but it's literally just recorded videos. If you want it, great. And then halfway through their boot camp, their day 2, end of day 2, we'll send them an email that's like, hey, if you do want that coaching and support, it's inside the membership. And because you paid for the boot camp, we'll credit you that $25 because it is inside the membership. We give it to our members for free. So we're like, you paid for it, retain access to that one you paid for a year, and we'll let you into the membership for $25 off your first month.
Smart, very smart. How much is the membership, if you don't mind me asking?
$67 a month.
Okay, nice.
Yeah,
that's cool. To wrap things up, what was that thing that Ange said to you in the pool that...
I love it. So she was like, when you enroll a new client into the agency, you should do an audit for them first, a paid audit. And we had somebody that was interested in working with the agency, but they were like, well, I'm not sure if I want to get rid of my team. Like they have an internal person that runs their ads. And I was like, well, look, we're not looking to step on toes. We're not looking to get rid of anybody. Let me just audit your strategy. And they were like, actually, that'd be great. Because my person is like great with the logistics. It's the strategy they don't get. So I ended up actually opening up like a new consulting stream for us, which is we've only done one, but they paid for the audit, which was awesome. And then they were like, well, we'll want to consult you month to month to keep the strategy going. So we now we meet with them on Sunday. They've already said yes, but I like to follow the process, and it's never a yes till you get the credit card. I know from my sales days, I used to work in a call center. But they're like, yeah, we're going to retain you to consult. And so now I have this really like low touch consulting point where for 1 or 2 hours a month, depending on what they choose, we'll meet with them, look at their ads, review their strategy, and we started with an audit.
Smart. How much with the pricing on the audit? Is it kind of on the lower end or the higher end?
It's $1,000 for the audit.
Okay, cool.
And it's about $1,500 to $2,000 a month to retain us for your ads, including an onboarding fee.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense actually.
Yeah.
That's good. You get them in, you show them value, show you what you can do.
Exactly.
It's paid, so it's not like ad expense.
Yep. So we create it's like a 10-page report, and I've done this for other people, but Ange was like, yeah, just do that all the time. And I'd never thought of it in that capacity. So we used it as like an entry point to the consulting or agency. And then it's kind of like, from that, you decide, do you want it done for you or do you want to manage it internally? But either way, we keep getting paid.
Yeah, smart. I like it. Cool. Well, Zach, thanks for coming on, mate.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome.
It's been a really good conversation. And I'm keen to follow your journey and see you continue to grow the business.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for coming on.